Zoom record.
It was a conduct version. This meeting will be both video and audio recorded. All those joining virtually will generally remain on mute. Second and speak. If anyone joining virtually creates an audio or video disruption, they will be manually detected for the meeting upon recommendation of person running the meeting. Public input before the meeting, please email your comments to public input at columbiact.gov. Prior to 24 hours before the meeting, the public may view the video recording of the meeting on YouTube at Town of Columbia, Connecticut. Please allow approximately 48 business hours after the meeting for the video. We have a call meeting to order. And we are able to realize going in the budget increase. And budget increase to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a chance to review the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes. Second. All in favor of the minutes as distributed, please signify by saying aye. Opposed. Abstentions. All right, our purpose here tonight is to review the town portion of the budget, the board of selectmen budgets. With an eye to reducing, but it would keep the mill rate a little bit more constant. And we just received some adjustments to the budget. Do you want to start with those or?
Sure. Can we shut that door, please?
Honestly. You don't feel like answering?
I feel like dancing, and answer myself right about here. You covered that? You want me? You're good. I'll start. Everyone. Thank you. So one of our key capital items was a sweeper. The we kept pushing back, because I don't know. I'm not got a lot of life left. Beth is confident, I'm a little director, that we can get this season out of good work. We actually have to analyze another part from the old sweeper, but I think we're good in sweeping shortly. We also looked into renting sweepers in the future. While we save for a sweeper eventually. So it's we're actually, we're getting somebody to do the sweeping for us. That's what I mean. So we're renting a service that is $30,000 a season to our town, but it still requires part of our crew to run the streets and we have to follow them, have safety and all that. But they'll supply the sweeper to the company. So that's $30,000 a year. And then we worked up and we'll get back when we start talking about capital, how we think we can buy a sweeper in the future without hitting it all in this year's budget. And then we also can reduce that $30,000 rental line. We get about $15,000 a year in WIP money.
That's what's accumulated right now, so it's using up 43,000 a year.
Okay, so we have 15,000 right now. So next year we could reduce that. Well, I have to put in this operating budget to rent it because it comes up for rental in the spring of this budget we're doing. So we think we could reduce that rental line in the operations and the budget down to 15,000. So that's a big savings off our capital. Maybe spending for this year, he thinks the sweep is gonna make it through this year. It's gonna make it this year, but spring of next year, which is still in this budget, we'll have to rent. Then Beverly, do you want to go through some of the lines that you found savings based on analyzing our expenses?
Yeah, when I went through, I looked at some of the electricity lines, and reduced the administration. Electricity line, chaplain, street lighting, just looking and predicting out the rest of the year, it looks like, we're gonna have some savings. I think last year we had done some increases because there was some temporary increases to Eversource, which I think have come back down. So that's about $5,200 I was able to take off the electricity line. Plus we had some changes in like HVAC systems and upgrades, so that's also what contributed to the savings. I looked at the fuel, and again, for heating oil, administration, senior center and public works. They're doing we had done some upgrades with HVAC and all that. I feel we can bring it down based on looking at what we are this year. Going to the end of this year, it looks like we can reduce those lines for next year. Plus our fuel line. Fortunately, we did contract for next year, so that rate is gonna be lower than this year, so I feel we can at least reduce the fuel lines to get that savings for next year. We had talked to Bernadette, the senior center, because they're getting new vehicles that we can reduce the repair maintenance line on vehicles by $3,300. We were looking at possibly getting assistant to the emergency management director. We removed that. It was a $2,000 stipend, so we just removed it. We're looking at lake management. There was some moorings that we're gonna repair, so we're reducing that by 1,000 because some of the work's being done this year, and felt we don't need to have that extra money next year, so we're not gonna do as much repair hopefully next year. Mark had talked to the Lions Club, and they were fine with us removing $2,000 from their annual grant. It's $10,000 this year, more so because of the 250th, they're gonna be doing some extra in the parade, but they were fine with reducing the $2,000. I had also, I think it was just a oops on my part, for 20 hoop and lake management equipment. Well, there is no request for that I found today, so I removed it. So I took that out, and then we did finally get our group insurance rates. So we had budgeted 15%, and it's about a 12.7% increase. So I was able to take 13,600 off the group insurance line. So that was a total reduction of about 36,100. And then just adding the sweeper services, which I think I put in rental a little bit, the contracted services. That net cost is gonna be 15,000, so basically an overall change with the board of selectmen budget was 21,100. And we're taking out the sweeper, which we had put in some credits for the NIP money and some other things. That reduced the capital budget by $296,000, so basically that's, if I do my math right, 117,100 off the whole budget. That makes sense.
How much off the whole budget?
107, no, 300.
300.
370, that's my math. I have my calculator. $317,100 off.
Great. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to talk to a couple of very shortly, all right? We are already working very hard, and it is my wish that Columbia, all the town business, all the town offices goes to 100% solar. We're working with Titan Energy. We put in a couple of new solar areas already for approval. And we are sitting down next week, and we're going to other areas and buildings where we're gonna be able to hopefully put in solar. So the electrical line, which continues to grow up and up, we hope it reduces to what we pay, far below what Eversource charges as a source. You always have to pay the delivery, but the source will come down a lot. That is my hope. This stuff here is nickel and dime, the sweeper, when we got into it. Yep, 30,000 to use the sweeper, to have a service do it. It's a good idea, we do that for a long time, But we've also projected out to be able to, if we want to purchase our own sweeper, because it's not gonna stay $30,000 a year forever. It will increase, and if we have the ability to put away and grab a sweeper in the next 4 or 5 years, then it'll pay for itself in 15 years of usage, so. This is not good, we understand it. But the future in 3 to 5 years looks pretty bright to me. We have new businesses that are coming into town, a couple of car dealerships. The Napolitanos are moving their sign business and expanding down off of Route 6 down here. The deal has already been done. So there's 2 dealerships, that business. And I'm working very closely with a couple of other businesses that could bring some needed overall grantless revenue to the town of Columbia. So, I'm excited for the future. We just have to claw our way to get there, and we're willing to work with 5PAC. You know, we've had a little preliminary, Mark and I have worked on this, we've run some things by Bev to make sure that we can do this. We'll work together. Not a problem. But we'll work it out, okay?
You want to know what we happen?
Don't tell me, talk to me about long range capital, you wanna do that?
Sure.
Okay, so just to, you know, preliminary, Kelly sent out just an exploratory email to myself and said, you know, what about, have your thoughts on this? And it's, Mark and I had already been putting together different thoughts on what we can do to bring the budget down for the upcoming year and years from now. I don't like to buy, or, you know, that's 9 years ago when I was first elected, I said, I'll never bond. I didn't know we'd have to have a purification system in the school of $8 million, so I should have left when I had the chance, huh? Yeah. So, let's see what we have.
So, of course, because you were able to find this $300,000 savings, which is fantastic and appreciate it. My numbers are much less than that than we looked at. So, I don't love bonding, but I recognize that it's necessary in a municipality. And as you know, Steve Cook has been talking about, there's certain things that are appropriate for bonding, like those things that are gonna last for 20 years. And that are substantial costs in and of themselves. And those are the kind of things like the culverts, that's what bonding is for. Things like a $2 million fire truck is also something that will last 20 years and can be bonded. The goal is to lump as many together as you can in 1 year, and I know we're not gonna be able to do all of these in 1 year. But I think most of the items in our capital budget could be moved into bonding. We have a building. We have, you know, renovations to buildings. And we have the $340,000 that we're faithfully putting aside every year to buy a fire truck for $2 million. I don't think a fire truck for $2 million is something that should come out of annual revenues. It really is something that should be bonded. And I know we've already got a substantial amount set aside for that, about 700,000. So it would be a nice, you know, reduction on the cost of the fire truck to use the money we've already set aside and bond for the balance. So I would remove the whole 340. I would remove the, basically, if you wanna look at the capital budget where you have a yellow line at 75, I would eliminate the 75 and everything below that. And it amounts to about $640,000. That will save pretty significantly on the budget.
So you're looking at the facilities, the building for 140.
Yeah.
$30,000 for transfer station improvements, yes.
Yeah.
35 for facility buildings. You know what that is.
We already have some money saved for
Yeah.
things, but so we could use that or we could bond it in a future year.
Okay, so but the bottom line is the project reserve, I'm sorry, the volunteer fire department.
Yeah.
Which is 341. 700,000 is actually 1.1 million, right?
Can I just comment on the other lines Kelly's looking at? The transfer station is basically paving apart and patching up the pavement, which is more maintenance project. I wouldn't probably put that in a box because it's a maintenance thing, it's not a long-term solution for that, but they're just trying to fix the road up there. The facility capital improvements for the building, some of that is just HVAC and small projects to upgrade like security system, the alarms, and HVAC repair. And the 25,000 is payment to buy a truck for facilities, which might last 10 or 15 years. So I don't know if you want to include those.
Well, we do have some money in the equipment budget already, that savings. We've been saving up a little bit.
Well, that's the first year, that's the first year, the money that's in the facility for the equipment, there's nothing in there right now except fund the truck. Fund the truck, that's gonna cost probably about $75,000 to $80,000. The facility have improvement building again.
So you're putting aside 25 to buy it in a future year? This isn't to buy it this year?
3 years. It's a fully
It's
equipped,
$75,000 cost.
yeah, but the truck's only gonna last maybe 10 years. Which again, we can do a short-term finance on that one, but it's the one where they have all their, set with all their equipment, tools, standard goes on it. If it lasts 10 years, I mean, ours is, you're able to repair.
Usually get more than 10 years out of a truck, but we keep the repair costs are escalating.
Escalating on,
Understand?
yeah.
We try to run as long.
And you think that, like I said, the transfer station is just mostly upgrade and maintenance and stuff. Just to fix that. So I guess where all the residents go, because there's a lot of potholes and stuff, so they're trying to fix that up, well, it's also the crops that are hauling back out, are on this very rutted road now, so that's,
Usually paving isn't, it doesn't have a light,
This is not a full reformation of the transfer station, it's
No.
patch paving.
That's
everything like that.
not that, more like a maintenance.
Yeah, it's not gonna make or break the plan.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But it needs to happen because people are going to start building the problem.
Okay, so we'll say 600 instead of 640.
But.
So I mean, and then, I've got other areas of the budget where I'd like to have a reduction, but I think we're probably not. Capital now, I know, we don't have another.
Can I ask you, hold on, Chief, I wanna ask you a question. Engine 105.
Yep.
We're to buy a new engine in 2032,
That's correct.
we got 90,000 per year going, and we should make the number that it costs,
100%.
1.6 million. Tanker 105. In the next year is 2033, is it $800,000, is it still kind of in line?
I did all my research again this year when I put the numbers together.
And we currently have 1.1 million.
I believe it's in that neighborhood.
1.129, 1.129.
So your cell phone's gonna come in?
Yeah.
Okay,
Will you let me know?
I will let you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, you had a question? I'm sorry, this isn't my meeting, I'm sorry.
County Commissioner to speak, Jeff Lewis, Chief of the Columbia Volunteer Fire Department. I'm here tonight in regards to budget cuts, especially capital. We've been very fiscally responsible for a volunteer organization for all the years we've been here. We've always met the line, not raised, and we've planned for the future of that building and the service we provide to this town. You get that service for free on our nights of no sleep, away from our families, and we're planning for the future for this town. Don't have to, but we do. We're looking out for the best interests of this town. cutting that bond or cutting our capital. And then when we come back in 2032, we're not gonna buy it, we're not gonna bond it. I know times can change. But we've been doing this for so long, setting aside money every year so the town, we watch other towns have to go in front of their boards and say, yeah, we need a new truck, it's $1.3 million. You're not getting $1.3 million. That's why we've worked very closely with the first selectman and the town administrator to set money aside coming forward every year, so it's not a big number. It's small numbers through the years. The Columbia Fire Department has also gone after grants for a total of over $400,000 that it did not have to come to the town of Columbia and ask for. Gear, a tanker that we're talking about replacing, and Scott Air Packs twice that we breathe to go in harmful situations. I don't think we're the area that needs to be cut. And I'm gonna back the fire department. I'm not for this. We've done our homework the way we should. Sorry.
I agree with Jeff, by the way. I've lived in Easttown my whole life. My father was a volunteer fireman. And I think we are very lucky to have a Columbia volunteer fire department, people like Jeff serving us. So I agree that we should not be cutting the fire department.
I agree to a certain extent because we are incredibly lucky to be one of the few volunteer fire departments that have such a level of excellence of service. Nobody's talking about disabling the ability to get new equipment. Everybody on this board and the board of selectmen is totally committed to making sure your equipment is up to date. We're talking about the mechanism for doing this and the fact that in the times we are now, the continuing to save money for expenses that can be funded, that are large capital expenses, it doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Can I just say one more thing?
Let's speak.
I agree with you. I don't think anybody was talking about cutting funding. I think we were talking basically about the accounting mechanics in whether it becomes a capital project, capitalized and funded. In the private sector, they use depreciation. You buy it, you're not in a cash basis.
I get it.
In here, we run on a cash basis.
Right.
So we try to reserve money, knowing that there's 1.3 million here and 900,000 there.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody was trying to say, we want to take it, we just want to change the vehicle. And if I'm not right, tell me here, because I thought that was, we were just saying, rather than using our operating budget cash flow from our year-to-year operations, we want it to be part of a reserve or an appropriation or a fund or a bond.
So with our capital, we've been asking the town every year to set aside a minimum of $600,000 for a paid department. That is knocking on the doorstep. As chief, I have to look ahead. I have to plan ahead. I came forward to them this year and I said, you got 26, 27. I don't know the way my numbers are, 27, 28 could be a totally change. It's because the way the dynamics are changing. So we can't bond for personnel. And this is why we've been asking them to set this money aside.
That would be a budget item. It's
Correct.
annual budget item.
Annual budget item, but we've been saying, get ready for the following year, you know what I mean? Start thinking about moving ahead. This is talking about planning. So we're looking ahead for the organization and in the town. Because why do you want to get a fire truck that you could save for in small pieces instead of bond it and pay more, really? Because you're going to pay a bond fee and all that. Where you could pay small fees like we're doing. I think right now you're paying $75,000. Well, you were lower, but when we move the money over, you're gonna pay $75,000 starting in 27 and 28 a year. $75,000 for a $1.7 million truck out in 2047. Small pieces, small numbers. Instead of a big number for a bond. Because who knows what it looks like in 2047? That bond, the bond, we might already have 10 bonds already out on us by then. Small pieces, small chunks of money set aside every year. Thank you.
Now, can you tell me how much interest we make on the $1,000,001 that we have sitting in the account that we're accumulating? Because we use limited cash, right?
I'd say right now we're earning a little over 3%. The rate has come down in the last couple of months before. Down.
So we're losing money because inflation is higher than that, how effect on the money that we're saving. Which I understand and I appreciate the notion of saving for 20 years to buy something. But there's an alternative mechanism that we have to consider, especially if you're telling us that we may have to pay for a professional fire department next year. We can't be putting aside all of the money for the truck because we're gonna have to spend it on personnel and then the bonding becomes more necessary. And I feel like this town has always put the fire department as a priority. I feel like I've been on this board for many years and the board has turned over many times, but the board of selectmen, the board of finance has always felt strongly that we need to be supporting our fire department. And I don't think we've ever really denied any of your requests because they are very reasonable. They're always thoughtful and, you know, the little bit that you ask for, we never think it's too much. It's just that this one thing, it's not that we want to deny it to you, and we certainly don't want you to get that message, but just an alternative funding mechanism because of the circumstances that if we weren't gonna bond, if we didn't have to bond at all, maybe I'd be feeling less encouraged about the possibility of bonding the truck, but we're gonna have to bond for the culverts. We know that, so putting another $1 million into that bond isn't that, you know, troubling to me. Whereas it would be if that was the only thing we were bonding. And in the past, we were really thinking there wasn't much to bond, so I just want you to understand my perspective.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
If you go behind the fold-out, the capital fold-out, you'll see a sheet called current bands being converted to bonding. The next page. So working with Stephen and Bev and our bond municipal advisor, Phil Lindsay. And working with Beth Lunt and our town engineering firm, Barton and Richuda. We put together this scenario and this page after is the actual pro forma of the debt impact of this entire scenario. So if you look at the scenario, what we're facing in June 30th of 2027 is a bond band, which is short-term borrowing for the HVAC project of $165,000. And then the bond debt service in June 30th of 2028 will jump to $512,000. So then we
Mark,
go.
I'm sorry, what line are you looking at?
We're on the top.
No, we're on the summary
Oh,
sheet, and then I'll go to the book one. So then in proposed bond issuance for the three projects, and you could add a fourth project, which is the Columbia Volunteer Fire Department cistern. So the two big culverts, Pine Street is going to be $1,780,000. It hasn't got out the bid yet. That's the prediction from the engineering firm. We have a grant for half that, $890,000. So we would have to bond $890,000. And then in Thompson Hill, that's $1.8 million. We have a bond grant, I mean, not bond, a grant for $1.4 million. So we have to bond $360,000. And then Doubleday is estimated to totally replace Doubleday and all the drainage. It's estimated $2 million. That is, we have not found bond or grant money. I'm still looking, and I'm starting to look for earmarks with our state representatives. Oh, thank you. Let me just let Maria in. Thanks, Margaret. Doubleday, right now, we're not begin construction until spring of 2028. And this volunteer fire department cistern at only maybe, we haven't gotten the bids back, we're not due for a couple weeks. I estimate maybe 125,000 or less. We think we could pay for that in the short-term financing portion of this bond, so it would actually never go to bond. And then we have some future projects, Egerton Road culvert, which are just now engineering, that's in this budget for engineering. Mock Brook culvert in this budget for engineering. School parking lot, Barbara just notified us that she got a $48,000 grant. They can use for Board of Ed capital. We have a meeting, before, haven't set a date. You tell me tonight when you want to meet. But we're gonna meet next week to talk about at least repairing the parking lot for the moment. But then possibly engineering a better solution for traffic flow to keep the kids and everybody safe from the buses. And then we just been notified that we might have some issues with our spillway at our dam. That's being engineered right now. I don't know what that'll be. But if you go to the pro forma, you'll see exactly the bands we're paying this year, which is the debt service column. So we've already paid 219,000. And then in June of 2026, we'll pay 219,000. That's in the budget already. And then in the budget we're looking at now, we have 165,000 to pay the next band payment towards the HVAC project. And then in the third column, you'll see once we bond for the HVAC project, those are all the principal and interest debt payments. Servicing that bond, that 5.5 million, which will eventually cost us 7.9 million, borrow 5.5. So it's not inexpensive to borrow. Then, from everything I went through with the culverts and Doubleday, you'll see the next columns, which are two band issues, because we're putting it out over 2 years before we bond to get all these projects done, so we have one issuance of the second bonding. And that would be in 2027, band payment of 54,000, 2028, a band payment of 78,000, and then 2028, looks like the debt service will kick in at 71,000, then the full debt service, you can see the last column, it peaks in 2033 at 2031, 32. 760,000 is the peak.
782, 31, 71.
782. That's our highest, and then it basically drops off 20,000 a year as we head towards our 20 years of bonding. And Stephen, do you want to follow up with some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, print money. Truthfully, I'd like to see is once we get to the 782, we pay that's what we fund every year, 782. But again, you're putting 20,000 for years on 360,000. I'm not sure what that does for maybe in the year 2049, we'll buy a sweeper. I understand what you're saying, Kelly. I got it. I'm gonna need some time to really think about this. I mean, if it was me. No, I'm on your side out there, okay? You never ask for what you want. You always ask for what you need, and that's important to me. I know all about safety. I know rushing into fires. I know what Scott packs do for you. I know what your breathing apparatus is. I know your fire trucks and everything else. In fact, you came to us 6 months ago and said, listen, we're gonna move money from one tanker to the other, so we don't have to spend, perfect, help us out. I have to look at this, but I look with, right off the bat, I say, take all the money and just put it toward engine 105. I mean, we have, what, $1.2 million there already? I don't know, I'll have to take a look at this. I understand, I also do understand that some of this stuff is out beyond what we usually do for bond time wise. But you're telling me that we can almost get a bond as a line of credit type of thing? Appropriation to spend, like put a plan together, say this is what we're going to spend for.
Right, normally, like with these 4 projects, we would go to the town for the appropriation to spend the total amount of money that those 4 projects require. But then we'd also go for a bonding appropriation. We're gonna spend this, but we assume to get this amount of grants. The bonding amount we think we're gonna spend is less, because taking off the grants.
But if we don't get the grants, it's there.
But you already have the spending appropriation approved in the referendum.
So in that respect, if. You know, you need another $1 million for fire apparatus, I would throw that in the appropriation, so it's there. To spend it. And turn it over to a bond issue, so we're getting what you need.
But you can turn it over later,
Yes,
once you have enough to justify a bond.
right.
So my question, sorry,
Go right ahead.
you guys go ahead and take this bond, let's say in 27, 28. Okay, my truck is not till 2032. So in 2032, I'm gonna come to you for 1.6. And you pull more bonds on top of bonds, so it's just like grabbing loans. Okay,
Yeah, and
It's like
that's,
mortgaging 2 houses.
love it.
You have mortgage.
Wish I had 2 houses. Time to get one. Yeah, never know.
Okay,
Well, the other thought process too, Stephen, was going,
yeah,
once you get to your highest principal debt load, say 781, you make that your standard across the board. As you're paying off the bonds, you're still putting money away for your next bond issue. So the mill rate never gets hit again for bonding, cause you're still putting away the 780,000 every year. And then it's the next bond issue for the next 2 culverts and the next school parking lot. You know, you add those up, you're looking at millions of dollars. You do a 3rd bond issue, because you've been flatlining your debt service,
flatlining, all right.
you can absorb that bond without a mill rate increase. So that's how a lot of towns that, we're not used to having debt. That's our challenge.
The other thing is a lot of this on this capital stuff, we'll look at it and say streets, culverts, bridges, you name it, it's infrastructure. 2 years ago, when we had the biblical rains, I mean, it showed us that we are way behind the 8 ball, 50-year-old roads that were deteriorating. The drainage underneath them isn't working anymore, they're not big enough. We were called every day. There's ways to help to pay for those things, and we'll talk about it, we'll be having a meeting. Within a month or 2, to be able to come up with some ideas that would help. But. I have to look at this a little bit more, I'd like to work with you and kind of put the numbers down and go through this before I bring it back to the board of selectmen and say. We need to look at this is what they're proposing, this is what I think we need to. Endorse or fight back, to be honest with you, but I'm very open to putting the plan together. Okay.
I did have a quick question. I was gonna propose that our fund balance, reduce our fund balance to, right now I understand it's at 15% and reduce it to 13%. Now, I know that, I'm not sure, but I think if we reduce it, that impacts our ability to bond or maybe even affects our percentage rate. Is that true? I
Yes.
mean,
Not only that, you have to produce a plan to get that back up to 15% because of the financial statement that we made and was voted on.
well, we've done that before though, but I mean, I don't,
We're in the middle of bonding, doing short-term bans, but yeah.
but how would it affect the bond rate or our ability to bond?
It will.
It'll probably affect our rating.
It would cost us higher interest because we wouldn't be as fiscally responsible when the market looks at us. If we go below our policy of 15%.
and let's remember, we only voted on the policy a few months ago, so it was capricious, to change.
Question for you, Mark. Have you talked with other, heads of towns, boards about what percentage of their annual budget is already sitting as bonded numbers? I mean, how does Farmington build a $60 million high school addition? What's the number?
I can tell you in East Haddam, which is twice the population, twice the budget, twice the size of Columbia.
Yeah.
When I left 10 years ago, we had just issued a $20 million bond authorization for 4 major projects.
Okay,
And those projects took 5 years to complete. So we had a total appropriation for 20 million, and then each one of the projects as it hit, we were doing short-term financing until we finally bonded the 20 million.
and was that running like a $50 million budget annually? Okay,
Right.
so double the budget, double the population,
Double it.
and we've got
But
10 times as many bonds.
they're used to debt because they're running 3 major schools and they buy a lot of open space. And they probably have an equivalent percentage of business, which is not. I think Columbia actually has a higher percentage of business revenue than even East Haddam. Because a lot of theirs is nonprofit, Good Speed Opera House and
Okay.
a school for disabled. So it was a challenge and they had 3 lakes, but they had a lot of wealth in those 3 lakes and along the river, which helped make that budget work.
So we should get more wealthy people.
Add 2 more lakes and a river, then we'll be all set. But
Or move to Farmington.
my point is, they're finally,
Like,
they're finally putting the brakes on some of the major projects, because they're running into the same problem we are.
Yeah.
They're hitting the wall of what, they want a new library, they want a new fire station, they want a new downtown renovation, which I started that committee in 2007. They still haven't agreed what to do with downtown, for East Haddam.
Yeah.
But my point is, all the towns are facing these huge infrastructure costs, and that's why we're putting so much pressure on the state. They're not funding appropriately the towns. Like they're right now considering opening up Pequot money back to where it was before they cut us all in 2019. And that wasn't right. The state's been taking all that revenue.
Thanks.
I don't want to get on a soap opera, but the necessity that the state sits on a big cash reserve and the towns are not being funded where they should be. Then our ECS would be appropriate and we would have the big hole in special ed.
Now, with the changes that we discussed, have we put that down into a mill rate number yet, or is that what's gonna come out after this meeting tonight?
Where are we right now?
It's gonna, I think it's under
the dime
12.
The numbers that I put in are in the document I got tonight. So.
Yeah,
mill
I
rate
see that.
is now down to 34.10. So it came down like, I don't know, or yeah,
It was over 35.
yeah, it was over 35. So it's now at 34.10 or 4.83 million, increase of 16.5, so it came down about 1.8.
Yeah, I have some numbers that you had given me, that if we could reduce the budget by 1,200,000. Which they've already done the 317, and we're talking about 600 and something out of capital and a few more state. So if we reduce by 1,200,000, that would give us a bill rate of 32.58, which is a 3.31 mil increase. And it represents 11.32% tax increase. So 3.31 mil increase.
See, that number I could buy into because it keeps us up to Hebrew. I don't know why I want to be under Hebrew, but I want to be under Hebrew. I'm going to 12 point whatever. I think
So that's with 1,200,000. If we only did 1,000,000, it would be a 3.65 mil rate increase to 32.9, and that's 12.49% tax increase. But less ideal. I'd like to agree, I'd like to get below 12%.
They're still big numbers, but we're in kind of uncharted waters here.
Yeah, we have a significant amount that we have to spend on the short-term financing and. Some of the culvert work that we have to do is not able to be bonded because it's engineering, so. Obviously, once we get the engineering done and we have the quotes, then we can bond the project. The preparatory work, we have to pay for it.
I'm a Columbia Town resident, and I'll guarantee you they'll come to me and say, "Well, it'll never go down below that."
And these, just so you know, these numbers,
Yeah.
these financing numbers do not include the cost to go out to short-term financing and the bonding, if there's another $75,000 that we're gonna have to set aside when we do decide to do it. So we do have to make sure that's somewhere in the numbers when we do decide to go. I don't think that would be anything that we presented. I know the financial advisor mentioned it when we talked to him earlier, so, but
Yeah, we're spending 173 on the culvert engineering, which we won't be spending next year when we're doing the bonding issue, so.
Right.
That, I think we'll have the latitude in future budgets to do that, because some of the bigger ticket items this year will go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, our bands and the next set of bonding don't get till 2028.
27, 28.
That's 54,000.
That's the interest. We're talking about the fees to get the bond,
Okay.
which would pay for the financial value, the experience, the closing costs. You have to remember to keep that in our mind when we're planning for that. Not to add more to the budget.
And I think if you don't take any money out of the designated fund, I understand your point that we leave, will be a little bit over 15%, but then next year, when we're looking at some of these expenses for the debt service, we'll have a little bit of a kitty built up, maybe we'll be at 16 or 17% with the amount that's coming back from the town and the Board of Education, so we'll be able to use some of that from the designated fund next year as opposed to this year. Not the bond services.
So Kelly, so what are you looking for from the town? As much as we can, right? So we gave you 300 and something, a million. Oh, you're sweet.
Well, I had come up with 918, you've done 317, I understand that a few of the things that she doesn't think should come out. So 600 plus the 300 was 900,000, I think, not much of a difference between 1,000,000 and 900.
I'm sorry, the 600, what?
600,000 on top of the 317 you already found.
Yeah, you look at that.
You want to add a capital, or do you want us to go back and we'll look between the two by capital?
I was only looking at capital, and I know there might be a little bit of savings in the POS budget, but it looks like you've already found it, so.
Well. Yeah, I'll take you back and we'll take a look at it, okay, cause I think. I mean, I'd hold your feet to the fire if I told you I'm gonna bring something out and you tell me we'll cover it in bonding, and we don't cover it in bonding, we're both gonna look bad.
Is everybody else in agreement with that? Big part.
Well, and where are the numbers from? Like 317 is.
So it was
DPW equipment?
from the yellow line down,
Right here.
but Bev says I can't take the transfer station out, so we find out and come back. That is, I understand the patching, and that's gonna be next year, I mean, they're gonna start working on that.
Okay.
So really, it's from that, where you've got the yellow highlight of 75 and down. Leaving in the transfer station. So it's
Okay, so
612.
What was the facilities capital improvements buildings?
Those are
35,000.
Just camera system.
That's the doors, the library,
Doors,
camera
cameras.
systems, and probably HVAC improvements, there's just some minor projects.
Facilities, truck, equipment, 25.
Fine.
Those, I wouldn't,
I don't think they have a 20-year-old.
they wouldn't be that. They're more like a maintenance, yeah, except for the truck, the other one, kind of like a maintenance or something.
Well, again, next year when we have the less that we're spending on the culverts. Decide more money for the truck.
Right.
Okay, so take that out and starting in 27, 28, and let's go 28, 29. We can bump that to 50. That's what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Put your initials on it. Take out the truck, facilities truck, take the 25 out of this year's budget coming up and add it to 28, 29 for 50 overall.
Yeah.
Because the capital there is a lot less.
At the 27, 28.
Well, either one, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
However one's.
Let's split it between the two, so it's not the Jimmy that.
But whatever one I get.
Okay, so then the other,
40
Chief, you and I are gonna sit down, we're gonna take a look at your budget. I know the numbers are right, I just redid them, we're gonna talk. Alright, I'm not promising you anything, we're gonna talk. Okay? Cause that's the only other place we're gonna be able to cut, and I'm not liking it either. We're so close.
Then chief or something,
Yes.
I look at everything as a cut, when you're just pushing it down the road. And next year, we don't know what next year holds. And things can be a lot different next year, so you keep pushing it down the road, like putting a Band-Aid on, and the Band-Aid is eventually gonna weaken, falling off, and the pot's gonna be bigger, it's kinda like I asked for the fire truck. So you could have already $20 million, these roads are falling apart. These roads are falling apart, pretty much I'm telling my drivers, you drive in the middle of the road.
We understand.
So we push it down the road, and then when I come to bond in 2032, you can't take any more out. Why can't you take any more out? We're already maxed in our bonding. I've lived in this town my whole life. Whole life. My father grew up here, I've stayed here, they left. Smart. But I love this town. We've been very good. Just don't think the fire department is where you come. There are a lot of other avenues that are open to go after. Fire department, I just don't think, like Steve and I will have a conversation, but my budget is tight. And we're the only ones that give to our budget too.
No, again, I will reiterate, no one is trying to fight the budget.
I understand that, but I'm listening to the conversations. I'm listening, so I will have a conversation with Steve and we'll go from there, thank you.
I didn't make me look good, because I was gonna, just talk to you. You didn't make me look great, cause I just talked to you, I understand. Okay? Hang on. Okay,
Anybody else have suggestions on pipe actually? So that, if there's other directions. Anybody?
Actually, I have some questions. That is, are we done with capital?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand the mechanism by which we project our expenditures for the year. Because if I look over what our expenditures to date are in some of the categories, they seem to be lagging behind in terms of time, but they're not. Now, I know they live right equally every week, but I'm looking at the say executive and general admin services. So, on that, they want 30. Okay. So. 2 versions a year, we spend about 60%. I don't count my little figures at all, but the year, and. Still, it looks like we have, and we underspent in previous year, and we're still going for. An increase, and I'm not sure exactly how we're coming to those numbers for the increase.
So some of them don't work for that. Some of the money that was put back is for insurance, which I tightened up this year, and. So again, it depends on the enrollment. So if we've had some turnover, so people who were taking the benefits, we've replaced them with people who don't take the benefit. We've had people who've come on, so sometimes it goes up, so it's always, I call it guess, or just a projection of who's enrolling in what. Again, same thing with turnover, we've had people who left and we had filled positions sometimes for months. So we have savings in all the salary lines and the taxes and the benefits. So where we start out with the budget with full staff, during the year, we have not been paying people.
Right, yeah, I think I understand the contributors, the. The projected needs or the proposed expenditures. Looking historically back at where the expenditures have been, I feel like there's. Could possibly be some significant. Not like, not like capital, but. You know, that looking through this, we might get $500,000. By thinking through some of these things, and I'm not sure exactly. Just if there's, I think it's an art, it's not science.
No, it's not, but we certainly can go through those lines again and see, if there's something else that is not being used, we can reduce, I mean, there's. You know, all the departments. Grants and project out what supplies you need, what services you're using, some of these. Costs, like I put in stuff for the audit, and we anticipated to spend $5,000 in a federal audit. This year because of ARPA funds, well, we didn't need that money, so that money's going back to the general fund. We've had some services we thought we were gonna be using, not think of anything offhand. And didn't need as much cost in those services, so again, we had a trooper. Who we budgeted last year. Top step, we have a new trooper at a lower step, so they're saving, we couldn't predict that, there was a change. And this year, we got an estimate from the state, but if they decide to give our trooper a big promotion. We're gonna be fine for that, so, you know, again, it's. You know, it all depends on what's being used and how's it being used, most of the departments try to. Stay within budget, but again, sometimes things change throughout the year, not like any budget, so. I know that's why we have contingency too, but. Right, we've got to tap into that, so.
Well, Judy too, what Beth's talking about, we've been down the payroll clerk for quite a while. That's in the budget, so it's gonna be a savings, because that's been doing the work of people for a while.
Yeah.
But we have to put it in the budget, because we're about to hire someone hopefully, and we'll need it for the next year's budget.
Well, I see just compared to the last budget that I was looking at, the one we received tonight, that. There have been some. Decreases in the projections and a small, increase in the, variance. Since the last. Yeah, production.
Yeah, so I went through a little bit again to see where we're at. I didn't do much of the expenditures, but definitely on the revenues. I try to update those today so that you can see where it's impacting. I probably have to do a little deeper dive on all the expenditures to see. I'll try to have that for next week, if you're having me next week. And, you know, but it's again, going through, the risk report from the year, it's still low. I know right now that, we are maxed on our oil delivery because of such a lovely winter. So we're gonna probably stop deliveries until hopefully we can get through July 1st with no more oil deliveries. Because We're at
Everybody
market.
turn the heat down, please.
I turned
That's
it-
why we have split.
We're on.
Yeah.
Alright, Thunder.
Nowhere on the ground here, so, I mean, we tried, the department is also look at that to see where they're at. So, it's not always projected, because things, all of a sudden they go, oh, we're gonna have to use, we're gonna have to.
Well, the 5.15 increase that was in the last one is now down to a 4.3 increase in the OS. Yeah, so let's just keep heading in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going through it again.
I guess I'm saying it's the kind of tab to that, I mean, that's like several places where it seems like. You know, we spent to date about, or not to date. To March, early March, which is 2/3. About 55% in some places, and we're adding a couple 100,000 for next year. My question really isn't what makes up those, my question is, you know, and it could be spitballing, based on your long experience of doing this, that, you know, this is a place where we're vulnerable, and this is a place where we're not vulnerable, so you're projecting. I'm just trying to understand how we come up with the increases that we come up with.
Well, that all comes down to their each department, so
Right,
we
but
have to look at each department's budget again and just see, if what they put in is can be changed. Yeah, let's just go back to the departments and have them review the budget.
right, because Steve and I, others have had this discussion before, because in the municipality, we're managing by transfer, you know, where you can't do that in other, you know. You have zero-based budgeting, or you build up the budget with your needs, and that's not the way municipalities do their budgets. So, you know, I don't necessarily want to add to the undesignated fund this year. I'd like to take it out of the increase as opposed to adding anything back
That's understandable.
at 15%.
Yeah, keep it right at minimum.
Yeah.
I mean,
Any other,
I have a question based on, Kelly, if you've done this a million times, what's the probability that we push hard, get this number of 11.9 to 12%, and the town rejects it anyways?
They very well could. I think the number is high enough that,
It's scary. Yeah.
that I certainly think 18% will be rejected.
Well, I think 18
11
was a
or 12
no-brainer,
will be
it's gonna be
rejected
rejected.
as well. And then what happens is we come back and we start again and do another budget, and then we present it to the town, and sometimes towns present the same budget and it gets rejected again, sometimes it gets accepted the second time.
it'll be a week by week, it'll be a week.
Yeah,
We town meeting for that. Well, passes. And there have been towns that have gone into, you know, late summer, without budgets,
A couple years ago.
so.
You'll just be delaying billing, sending out tax bill, we send out an estimated tax bill and then do a supplemental.
And right now it's 16.45. Really increase.
How did it change for you?
That's what we.
Oh,
Incorporated.
Alright,
Alright,
so I need you to send me my budget back. Okay, to the board of selectmen.
Yeah. well, you have to anyway, because
I
they
know,
have to approve these changes anyway, so then go back,
I want to
then go back.
on that team for everybody asking. Now, we'll look. We'll look.
okay, well,
So do we want a motion?
Yeah.
Remove that the we send the budget back to the board of selectmen with a request that they reduce it by about 600 to 610 out of the capital budget. 100,000.
Now you're saying through funding in some way or pushing it off or,
By removing the items that previously identified from the capital budget.
not electing to try
About
to,
$600,000.
not trying to use short-term funds, borrowing
No,
or anything else to
it's
take it
premature of
out?
that, that'll be next year. So those things will be moved and they will be put into future year budgets. Bonded or otherwise.
You wanna just restrict it to capital, or can we look at upgrading to?
Any large-
Like operating at
Anything large.
$600,000.
You wanna reduce capital and operating so that we have, are you
Yes,
saying
yes.
just capital?
No, that's
An additional 600,000.
And or.
either or both budgets.
Okay, yeah, your motion was just saying capital, but might not have to do that. Capital or operating, 610.
And the roads are still gonna.
I said. Thank you. Any more discussion?
I second.
I did already. All right.
Oh, is Maria, I'm gonna have to ask Maria.
Oh, she's waiting here.
Yeah, it's here. There she is, here. Thumbs up, baby. Oh, there she is, yeah.
All right, all in favor of sending the budget back to the Board of Selectmen with a request for an additional 610,000. Cut, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Start discussion. Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it, that. Very much. Talk about Board of Education now.
Yes.
Now, so I think, we've looked at a lot of cuts that we're gonna have to do. In a lot of different ways. I don't think that just taking, hopefully possibly $900,000, downside is gonna be enough to get us to a percentage increase that I think we can all live with and the town will vote in favor of. So I would like to recommend that we ask the Board of Education to reduce their budget by 200,000. And I understand that we're not gonna identify specific items that we think they should cut, and I do recognize that ultimately that reflects approximately 1 to 2 full-time equivalents, and that may be where you have to cut. And I understand that, so I don't need you to explain to me that that's gonna be the consequence of that request, because I make it mindfully. That it may cost employees, by not making this request. But we're asking everybody to sacrifice, and that may be where we need to go. I think 200 will bring us down to still over 5% increase in the budget, and I think the Board of Education, I also believe that there's gonna be an increase or decrease on your benefits. Because those numbers were estimated at 15%, they're probably gonna come in lower, so maybe it's 150 additional that you have to come up with. And I don't ask lightly, but I am gonna ask the rest of the committee to consider whether we can ask the Board of Education to do that.
Barbara, what's your reaction to that request?
Kelly had it'll have to be staffing to get to $200,000. We've identified, like, we had talked before about pay to play, and cutting anything that, early care and whatnot. Doesn't amount to that much. It amounts to about $35,000 or so. And to get to 200, it would have to be staffing because, you have to, let's say a teacher or a para, their salary plus their benefits. It would, we're gonna look at non-mandated programming or, so it's at least impactful to students, and obviously we have to legally have certain things in place that we can't touch. So I'll meet with the Board of Ed to discuss.
Can I ask you a question, Barb?
Of course.
Is this, when I was on board, it was discussed once, but it's like in the past through discussion. What would be the offset if you saved X amount by letting someone go? Then how much of that do you immediately have to give back if you have to pay them unemployment? If there was a net like it almost.
Right.
There was a year where we said, well, you have to lay off 3 people to really get the savings of 2 kind of thing.
Right, and Ben has that number for the
Okay.
workers,
But there is,
Yeah, employment insurance.
yes, you're right, so like.
That's not life insurance, so the insurance goes up that, like, you should use it. But it's not. like
rating
paying.
and yeah.
Yeah, so
Some
you're gonna have to
cost.
offset your, when you decide to move people, you're gonna have to budget an unemployment line. So, you know, that could be, depending on the salary, there's usually a max of like, I think it's like, last time I looked, it was like 650 a week for 26 weeks, so. Whatever that is now.
So are we self-insured or?
We get billed when there's, when they're on flat claim.
It doesn't make.
It's not the full salary, no.
So Barbara prepared some material for us based on some of our questions from. Yes, we.
Not, I apologize, I printed just in case that you didn't have the 2 pages to a page one, so it's really small. Happy to, send it, scan it, pages to you. Do you have that in your email?
Yeah. So, and I think I really appreciate your doing the analysis of the scores. And some. Wanting more information. Oh, gee. Just out of curiosity, people get their personal days back every year. They're paid for their personal days that they don't use every year.
If it's in the content, yes, so it's an act contract.
Well, this is alleviate some of the restrictions imposed by the contracts and provisions.
Maybe starting to talk about board of ed.
Sure.
So Christine Scazzino, I'm the vice chair of board of ed and I've served on the budget committee for 5 years now. I'm very passionate about this, so just please excuse my shaky voice and emotion that may come out of this, but I'm actually looking for some advice. Being on this budget committee for 5 years, I seem to be getting some kind of like mixed signals or mixed communication of how to present a budget. I feel like year after year, I come to these meetings and I sit here, usually around now when the Board of Selectmen budget is being, it gets presented and then the next week, and so the cycle goes. And it seems to me that within a week's time, they can find some significant savings, right? I'm just not sure how we can do that differently, right? So like, we're gonna go back to our meeting, but like, we haven't had any indication from the last meeting to this meeting that there was gonna be, that we should be looking for cuts, right? Or that we should be looking to reduce our budget. And that question wasn't asked of Board of Selectmen yet, but yet they came with a $300,000 reduction. So I'm confused as to when we present our budget to you from the very beginning, should we be presenting you our bare bones budget? Like, we can't function or we can't operate without this budget? Or should we be presenting what we think we might need with a little bit of extra because we're gonna be asked to cut? And I think we're actually even, some of the conversations are going that way even at the town, right? Like, so if we meet 12% tonight or whatever, at the end of this, the town can come back and say, no, we want you to cut more. But if we present the town with a 13%, and then we say, oh, look, we were able to come back down to 12%, and then it passes. So I understand and fully respect that you should not have fluff in your budget. Like the fire department, I don't believe we ask for anything that we don't need, right? I understand the economy, I understand the need for cutting. I'm a taxpayer as well, on a teacher's salary. So it's not easy for us, our family either. So serving on this budget committee for so many years, I just want to know that I'm doing my due diligence when we're spending all this time on our budget to present to you, the town, everybody, that we are really giving you our true bottom numbers. So yes, it means cutting teachers, but so at what cost are we asking our school to function on? Are we presenting a valuable education to our students? Like, let's just say it's 2 teachers. Like, at what cost to our students are those 2 teachers? Right? Like, I don't think you see that, not you, you know, anybody individually. As a whole, people don't see what the meaning of that is on paper. Right? It might look great that we can cut it by 200,000 because we cut 3 teachers, 2 teachers, whatever it may be. But what is the fallout because of that? And how much are we really saving in the grand scheme of things? Like $200,000 is how much of a mill? Right? So at what cost are we willing to go to where we are running that line of not being able to give our high quality education to our families, to our students? So those were just some questions that go through my head. I'm totally open to feedback. I'm open to collaboration. I want to understand it better. I would think I'd have a better understanding of it 5 years. I'm an analyst by nature, and I'm just seeing these patterns year after year of what is happening. And it's confusing to me. And I want to do my due diligence, and I want to do what's right by our town and by these committees. But it's hard to do that when we're being asked to do something that we can't physically, financially do and be able to uphold the high quality education for our students. So I appreciate you listening, and I thank you for your listening ears. And I understand the need. I just don't understand how in 1 week's time, if we didn't have it last week or 2 weeks ago, how are we going to have it in a week from now when we meet on Monday, right? And I also don't understand, like, from last week to this week, when did the Board of Selectmen meet to be able to come up with those cuts if it wasn't pre-planned?
Monday.
So you had a meeting in between.
We presented
had a
our
public
budget
meeting?
here, and then I know that we're in a bad situation financially. I know that. So I sat down with Mark and I said, okay, we need to, first of all, DPW, let's bring them in. I went down there, I walked through with the foreman down there, we looked at all the stuff down there. And sometimes you kind of went out to the Board of Selectmen. Sometimes the directors
Clarify
don't.
that, please. I am not going after anybody.
We
I'm speaking
don't
of-
pad anything, but sometimes the directors, they don't understand the true urgency.
Okay.
In our side of the house. So when I talk to the director of the public works and I say, they're gonna ask for cuts and stuff, tell me about this and tell me about that. They're sitting down there on $8,000 worth of scrap metal. Jesus, cash it in, will you please? They're sitting down there on, 2 bulldozers that could go to auction. Send them to auction, for Christ's sakes. I'm down there, feet on the ground going, tell me this, tell me that, tell me that.
Okay.
When it came to the $360,000 sweeper.
Right.
I said, there's gotta be other options. Well, there's a company out there that does this service. Well, how much is that? 30,000. Okay, that's easy. I had to ask questions. Nobody, especially fire department, Department of Public Works, anybody who provides that, everybody who provides what they believe is their value to the town, they don't wanna cut, they wanna do the job right.
Right.
But I just get down there to get into the weeds, to understand what they're looking at, to try and ask them questions. Where else can we go? What else can we do?
So
When they
thank you.
tell me that.
Yeah.
Then I bring it, make a call, and, we'll all go out of a meeting and go, this is what I'm gonna do. What do you think?
Proposed cuts were sent Friday to the, this was going to be an offering that we're going to discuss tonight, but vote on if FIPAC were to send it back like they did.
So
Next
that's a learning point for me. You're able to have these side conversations.
I
right?
don't-
You're able to go to these people.
Yes,
The
I
board
don't
of-
have a union
Board of
that I have to
Education
worry
does
about,
that.
that's locked
Maybe we
in.
can, but we don't have that opportunity to do that, right? So,
I understand that.
I'm looking at your
and
stuff right
again,
here.
I'm
I
not
can't find
saying you're
any-
pointing fingers, it's totally a learning opportunity, and I hope I was clear when I started that conversation that I'm open to collaboration and learning, like, it really, I'm not pointing fingers.
Well, yeah, and I would just like to jump in and say, really appreciate your dedication. It's a difficult process every year to do it 5 times. We appreciate your service to the town in doing that. And I expect you to be passionate about education. And different than the board of selectmen and our operating capital budget, just for the town. Your process is completely different. Your approach to the value of education, given the committed people on the board, is going to be different. We are, I think, at the town side, a little more able to be practical, and we have a lot of places to go.
Okay.
So Steve has great relationships with all the department heads, and they work. You just don't have that mechanism, so it's completely different. And
We decided to be proactive when we knew the budget was as high, the questions that came over the last week or two. The town went a little proactive to see what can we do to come in today, because we knew it was gonna be the main topic today.
Right.
That's why we just went proactive on it, instead of waiting to say, okay, what's the cut, we thought we'd come in with something, that's what we did.
And I think I speak for our board when I say that we are, like, that's what we do. We're very proactive. Like, we have these conversations. We definitely dive deep into our budget to make sure we're presenting that. We try to do that proactively. And I think, I mean, and maybe I'm taking this too personally, some of these some of these like phrases that get used, like team player or like sacrifices, like, I just don't want it to be, we've been there, we've gone there, and we've come a long way. I don't want it to be a board of selectmen versus board of education. Board of education didn't do their part. Like, that's not a town community. That's not an environment that we should be creating. And I think that we're going in a really great direction there from where we were a couple of years ago. So again, I just want to clarify, I'm not targeting anybody or it's a learning opportunity of how things work.
we appreciate that. And I think over the years, at least that I've been involved with this, we've seen an effort on the part of BOE to be very realistic, to not ask, we think we're probably gonna cut, so let's ask a little more here, something better. I think that may have happened at other times. I think
It did.
I
know.
that it's not.
It is not.
I don't think it's
Even with
happening.
encouragement from the public. Not happening.
So, all that said, we're looking at a huge no rate increase.
Yes, we are.
And,
And I too don't want to be like, but hey.
And I'm also mindful that, we have a lot of what your constraints are at this point are because of the contracts that you have. And I know I raised this point last week, but we've been told in the past when we thought the contracts were too rich that that's it, we had to do it. And then I was told last week that you do have some latitude, and I know you're going into contract negotiations again.
Moving forward.
Maybe the unions need to understand that the town is not as able to give them the rich contracts that they've had. And they might need to consider whether they're going to have fewer staff, so they're gonna have more work, or they're gonna have more work and less pay. I think it's an important message that needs to go, not just to the Board of Education, because I have absolute faith that the Board of Education is doing the best that they can, and I absolutely think that the superintendent is as well. I don't think any of you, again, we've seen a lot of improvement on the little bit of extra here and there just to make sure. But you are in a cage. You have the teachers that you have to deal with, and maybe another message needs to go to them during the negotiations that go forward. Because we can't continue to have 7% and 8% increases every year.
I was on negotiations team as well for the last 2 negotiations. This last time was an exception because Columbia was considerably lower than a lot of the surrounding towns as far as payment goes. I do not anticipate that large of an increase coming up in the futures. Because we had to do this to help them have a little bit of wage in order to be able to continue to teach in our town and not have that tremendous turnover. So I do think there was a leveling out year and Hebron went through the same thing.
Yeah, I would, if we were in the 60-70% performance range that we have in towns that are similarly situated to us in our dirt, I would say, okay. But they should be working a little bit harder to get our scores up.
There's a lot
to
that
be
goes into school
comparable.
besides a teacher.
I understand that, but who else is teaching them? So,
Sometimes you're in a cage with curriculum.
but every school is then. If the state mandates a curriculum, then everybody in this, every town has the same. So to have one town performing at 70% and us at 50%, there's a disconnect there.
I'm happy to talk more about that later if you wish. There is a lot that goes into it that I'd like to share with you. To help you understand better.
And that is a focus.
I appreciate that it's a focus, and I do want you to continue to focus on that.
Although I will say in this year, we do better than 50% of the people in the schools that we go to for the most part. So I'm not sure what's happening from our school to their school. That we're over 60% in RAM and E.O. Smith were, our scores are 53% up in the 53rd percentile and stuff like, so.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know, they're teaching a different way to take the test, and this,
Yes.
so we're doing. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean,
It's very complicated.
It's never apples to apples.
I've.
We just presented it, I don't know if there's any other alternative. That was just my suggestion.
Other thoughts in terms of board bed?
I had a question about the motion. Are you?
I'm gonna actually.
You're-
There's not much to so far, but okay.
Yeah, you had the motion, I don't think we're seconding. I did have a question about, it. Are you requesting them to look to cut their budget with a goal of 200,000? Or are you requesting them to cut the budget by 200,000?
By 200,000, so
Well, I would suggest that we ask them to look to cut the budget with a goal of 200,000.
there's a difference between.
There's a difference.
between those
There may
statements.
be a difference, yeah.
So I mean.
I don't want to demand of them that they cut $200,000.
So you're looking.
I would love them to cut $200,000. And we'll make a decision after our public hearing about, whether or not we're gonna cut anything. And the public hearing is only in 2 weeks. But I would be a lot more comfortable if we asked them to cut money with a goal of cutting it $200,000.
But if they come in under 200, what's acceptable to you then? If that's your.
Like 180 would be,
I'm not saying that.
I'm fine with the
Is there a
word.
baseline
Yeah,
to?
Richard, I'm fine with your word. We're looking for confirmation.
I mean, honestly, I have a problem making demands of, I would have, the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education, they cut a specific amount. I would love to see them cut $200,000, then it would help our whole process if they would do that. But they may not be able to, so I don't want to make a demand of them that they cut $200,000.
but what the board of selectmen was a target of 610.
Yeah, well, but you were able to show areas where they could cut, and that's not what's.
We know that.
What happened with your motion for the Board of Education?
Right, we don't have a question yet. I'd like to recognize, Rand,
Okay.
who has.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with Dick. I think it's very reasonable to ask the Board of Education to review their budget and to look for anywhere where a cut could be made. But I would like to personally emphasize that I do not think that that should be at the expense of cutting teachers, especially, or any other area that would have a negative impact on the students and the learning, especially if we're saying we want scores to increase. It doesn't make logical sense to target the staff that would be responsible for doing that. So I agree with Dick. I think it's very reasonable to ask for a review of the budget to see where reductions can be made, but I don't think it's reasonable to say it needs to be X dollars, knowing full well that that means that we will have to cut staff that's necessary.
I mean, for Barb can answer again. So if we're going to budget and you can't simply cut positions because you have to counter budget upfront employment. And let's say you have 3 sections of the grade and 3 teachers, and there's 15 per class. If you cut a teacher, now you're at 45 and you have a 23 and a 22, you will have, I know from being on board, you will now have to budget for more para-help because there's going to be issues in the large class and you have to realistically account for these. So
I won't.
I don't think it's gonna.
We can't run on the right to ask for line item cuts.
No.
No, I'm just saying, like,
Yes. Classes of drive by, we just cannot.
but I'm saying, like, it's not so easy to make, like, we went over last week, when there's 7% of the budget is really the K through 8, and that's the only place to cut. And salary is the big, if you're gonna make a big dent, that's
I think
it.
that
Offset
3
that
years
by.
ago, we cut specials, we got rid of like a part-time gym teacher, we got rid of
That's small money though, too, right?
Spanish for elementary. So, I mean, those are positions that are.
Any more discussion before we? Continue, go ahead. So I make a motion that we ask the Board of Education to target a $200,000 reduction in their budget. Second.
So,
We've had enough discussion. Does anybody in the last word or sentence? All in favor of asking the Board of Ed to target a $200,000 reduction in their budget, signify by saying aye. Aye.
discussion.
Opposed?
I vote.
Maria.
I am opposed.
All right, motion carries. So we will have a budget workshop next week, then the notice of the town meeting has to go out.
So our legal notice has to be posted by Thursday, next Thursday.
So the special meeting is gonna be in town. Oh, is this town? No, we're probably gonna end up in Millis Hall, I think. The town meeting.
I would think, yeah, yes.
Yeah. But that's not the time we thought. I think last time when we thought there was gonna be more reserved the pool as a backup. But I think we should be fine. Yeah. So the public hearing will be on the 22nd. Well, we could talk about that more now. April 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah. April.
Right now, the budget would be 512.
Barbara, would you check the 22nd to see if the cafeteria is available?
Okay.
And you have to do a public hearing in the school or the gym. Just as an option forward.
Have an entrance fee.
There you go.
If any changes.
They get very,